The crystal chandeliers of the Hawthorne estate burned bright above 300 guests, casting golden light across the most exclusive wedding the city had seen in a decade. Champagne flowed. String quartets played softly. Diamonds caught the light at every table. And at the head of the longest banquet table sat Nathaniel Hawthorne III, billionaire heir to the Hawthorne shipping empire, smiling beside the woman he was about to marry in less than an hour. It should have been the happiest night of his life. Instead, it was about to become the night that exposed everything. "Don't eat that, sir." The voice was small, but it cut through the music like a blade. A boy, no older than 9, came running between the tables, his polished black shoes squeaking against the marble floor. His white serving jacket was slightly too big for him, the sleeves rolled twice at the wrists. One hand clutched a folded napkin, the other pointed straight at the silver-rimmed plate that had just been placed in front of Nathaniel. "Sir, please." "Don't eat it, don't drink anything either." The boy stopped a few feet from the head table, breathing hard, his dark eyes wide but steady. Around him, conversations died one by one like candles being pinched out. 300 faces turned toward the small intruder. Nathaniel's silver fork paused above his plate, hovering over a delicate cut of filet mignon glazed in red wine reduction. Beside him, Camille Devereux, his bride-to-be, slowly lowered her champagne flute. She was a vision in white silk and pearls, her honey-blonde hair pinned in soft waves beneath a diamond tiara. For one long second, no one moved. Then Camille's mother, Vivienne Devereux, rose halfway from her chair near the second table. "What is this child doing in here? Where is security?" A woman in a black serving uniform came rushing through the side doorway, her face pale with horror. Marcus, the boy's father, was already crossing the room toward his son with long, urgent strides. He was the new hire in the catering team, a quiet widower who had been grateful for the work. "Elijah," Marcus whispered, reaching for the boy's shoulder. "Son, what are you doing? Come here right now." But Elijah did not move. "Dad, she put something in it. I saw her. I saw the lady in the kitchen put something in his food and his wine." A murmur rippled through the room like wind across water. Camille's smile, which had been frozen in a half-curve since the boy first spoke, tightened at the corners. She set down her glass with extraordinary care. "Excuse me," she said, her voice silk over steel. "Did this child just accuse me of something?" Elijah's gaze flicked to her, then locked back onto Nathaniel. "Sir, she went back to the kitchen by herself. She told the chef she wanted to bring the plate out personally. She had a little brown bottle. She poured drops into the sauce. Then she did the same to your glass. I was behind the rolling cart with the desserts. She didn't see me." "This is absurd," Camille said, rising to her feet. Her diamond bracelet caught the chandelier light as she pressed a hand to her chest. "Nathaniel, I will not stand here on our wedding day and be slandered by a child the caterers brought in. Where are his parents? Where is the staff manager?" Marcus stepped forward, his head bowed slightly, his voice cracking with apology. "Sir, Mr. Hawthorne, I am so sorry. My son was supposed to stay in the back kitchen. He has a very vivid imagination, sir." "He must have misunderstood." "I didn't misunderstand," Elijah said. His voice trembled, but he did not look away from Nathaniel. "I know what I saw, sir. Please, please don't eat it." Vivienne Devereux let out a sharp, theatrical laugh. "Oh, for heaven's sake, the boy probably wants attention. Children do this at big events. They see all the lights and the cameras and they want to be part of it." "He's clearly been coached," another guest whispered loudly from a nearby table. "Probably wants money. You know how these things go." "Disgraceful," someone else murmured. "On the wedding day of all things." Marcus heard every word. His jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes on the floor, his hand gripping Elijah's shoulder. He had learned long ago that for a man like him, in a room like this, silence was the only currency that didn't cost him his job. But Elijah had not yet learned that lesson, and tonight he would refuse to. "I'm not lying, sir," the boy said, his small voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "I would never lie about something like this. Please, just don't take one bite." Nathaniel Hawthorne III slowly set his fork down on the white linen, and for the first time all evening he really looked at the boy in front of him. Nathaniel Hawthorne III had built his life on reading people. At 42, he had inherited a shipping empire worth nearly $4 billion, and he had doubled it in 12 years by knowing, with almost unsettling accuracy, when someone across a negotiating table was lying to him. He had stared down hostile board members, foreign officials, and rival executives who had spent decades perfecting the art of deception. So he knew, even before the boy finished speaking, that this child was not lying. The problem was he did not yet want to believe what that meant. "What is your name, son?" Nathaniel asked. His voice was calm, almost gentle, the way a man might speak to a wounded animal. "Elijah, sir, Elijah Carter. And how old are you, Elijah?" "9, sir. I'll be 10 in February. And you're sure about what you saw?" "Yes, sir, I'm sure." Camille made a soft, wounded sound and sank back into her chair, pressing a lace handkerchief to her eyes. "Nathaniel, please. You cannot be entertaining this. On our wedding day, in front of our families, in front of the press." She gestured toward the back of the room where 2 photographers from the society pages had lowered their cameras, clearly uncertain whether to keep shooting. "Camille," Nathaniel said quietly, "I'm asking the boy a question." Her head snapped toward him. For one unguarded second, something flickered behind her eyes, not hurt, not surprise, something colder, calculation. Then the wounded expression returned so smoothly that anyone else in the room would have missed the shift entirely. But Nathaniel did not miss it. He had seen that exact look once before, 3 weeks ago, when she had asked him about the new clause in his will. He had thought nothing of it at the time. He was thinking about it now. At the far end of the head table, an older woman cleared her throat. Eleanor Hawthorne, Nathaniel's mother, 76 years old and dressed in slate-gray silk, set down her water glass with deliberate care. She had not spoken a single word since the boy had run into the room. She had simply watched, the way she had watched every important moment of her son's life, with the patient stillness of a woman who had buried 2 husbands and outlasted 3 corporate takeovers. "Nathaniel," Eleanor said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "Listen to the child." Camille's head turned sharply. "Eleanor," I said, Eleanor repeated without raising her voice. "Listen to the child." A waiter near the kitchen door shifted uncomfortably. Marcus Carter felt his son trembling under his hand and squeezed gently, trying to communicate something he could not say out loud. "Stay strong. I'm here. Whatever happens next, I'm here." Nathaniel turned back to Elijah. "Tell me again, from the beginning, slowly." Elijah swallowed hard. He glanced once at his father, who gave him the smallest of nods. Then he began. "I was helping my dad in the back. I'm not supposed to be in the main kitchen, but Mr. Donovan, the head chef, he said I could watch from the corner if I stayed quiet. He said I could even help put the parsley on the small plates if I washed my hands twice." A few guests almost smiled at that. A few did not. Then the lady came in. The bride. She was wearing her white dress already. She told Mr. Donovan she wanted to bring out the groom's plate herself. She said it was a tradition in her family. She was very nice when she said it. Mr. Donovan said okay because she's the bride, and he turned around to check the dessert tray. Elijah's voice grew steadier as he spoke, the way truth often does when it is finally allowed out into the air. "That's when she did it. She went over to the plate that had the little gold mark on it, the one Mr. Donovan said was special for the groom. She looked around first. She didn't see me because I was behind the cart. She opened her clutch, the small white one, and she took out a brown glass bottle. It was very small, like the kind eye drops come in, but darker. She put drops on the meat, and then she stirred the sauce with the spoon and put the spoon under a napkin. Then she went to the wine the waiter had already poured, and she put more drops in the glass. Then she closed the bottle and put it back in her clutch and walked out smiling like nothing happened. The silence in the ballroom was so complete that the soft hum of the chandelier crystals could be heard. Camille rose again, slowly this time. Her tears had dried with remarkable speed. "I have heard enough," she said. "Nathaniel, if you do not have this child and his father removed from our wedding right now, I will walk out of this room and there will not be a wedding. Do you understand me? This is a choice. Choose." Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked down at his plate. Then he looked at Elijah. "Son," he said quietly, "would you bring that plate to me? Carefully, don't spill the sauce." The room held its breath. Elijah's small hands trembled as he stepped forward. The polished marble floor seemed to stretch impossibly long between him and the head table. 300 pairs of eyes followed his every step. A bead of sweat rolled down the back of his neck, soaking into the collar of his too-large serving jacket. He reached the table. He placed both hands carefully on either side of the silver-rimmed plate, the way his father had taught him to handle the good china at the catering hall. Slowly, with the focused concentration of a boy who knew he could not afford to make a mistake, he lifted the plate and turned to bring it around to Nathaniel. "Nathaniel, this is humiliating," Camille hissed. "Stop this immediately." Nathaniel did not look at her. Elijah placed the plate gently in front of him. Then he stepped back, his hands clasped behind his back, the way the senior waiters did when they were waiting for further instructions. "Thank you, Elijah," Nathaniel said. "Now stay right there." He turned his attention to the plate. The filet mignon glistened under the chandelier light, perfectly seared, draped in a deep burgundy reduction that shimmered slightly. A sprig of fresh thyme rested across the top. To any other guest, it looked identical to the plates being served throughout the room. But it wasn't. Nathaniel reached for his crystal wine glass next, the one filled with a 2009 Bordeaux that had been decanted exactly 45 minutes before service. He held it up to the light. The wine looked clear, normal, beautiful even. He set it back down. "Mr. Donovan," Nathaniel called out, his voice carrying across the room. "Please come here." The head chef emerged from the kitchen doorway within seconds. He was a broad man in his 50s, his white coat slightly stained from the evening's work, his face pale with the look of someone who had been listening from behind the door for the last several minutes. "Yes, Mr. Hawthorne. Mr. Donovan, did my fiancée enter your kitchen this evening?" The chef hesitated only a fraction of a second, but Nathaniel saw it. "Yes, sir. She came in about 15 minutes before service. She said she wanted to personally bring out your plate. A family tradition," she said. "And was that the first time tonight a guest had been allowed into your kitchen?" Donovan's throat worked. "Yes, sir, we have very strict protocols, but she was the bride, sir. I didn't think." "I'm not blaming you, Mr. Donovan. I just need facts. Did anyone else handle this plate after she touched it?" "No, sir. She insisted on carrying it out herself. She handed it to the head server at the dining room door so the presentation would be proper. But the plate itself never left her hands from the moment Chef Marcello finished plating it." Camille made a small, sharp sound. "This is ridiculous. I wanted to do something special for my husband on our wedding day. Now I'm being interrogated like a criminal." "Camille," Eleanor Hawthorne said softly from the other end of the table, "if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear from a few questions. Sit down, dear." There was something in the way the old woman said the word dear that made the temperature in the room drop several degrees. Camille sat down. Nathaniel turned to the boy. "Elijah, where is the bottle now?" "I don't know, sir. She put it back in her clutch, the white one with the pearls on it." Every eye in the room slowly traveled to the small, white, pearl-studded clutch sitting on the table beside Camille's plate. She placed her hand on top of it. "This clutch contains personal items," she said. Her voice had changed now, sharper, harder, the silk gone, only the steel remaining. "I will not have it searched on the word of a serving boy." "Then there is no problem," Nathaniel said quietly, "if you simply open it yourself and show us." "Absolutely not." "Camille." "No." A guest at one of the back tables stood up. A tall man in his 60s with silver hair and a charcoal suit. Dr. Harrison Webb, the family physician for the Hawthorns for the last 30 years. He had been seated beside his wife, watching the entire exchange with the still attention of a man trained to notice small things. "Nathaniel," he said, "before this goes any further, may I make a suggestion? Please, Harrison. Do not eat or drink anything on that table. Have the plate and the glass sealed and sent to a lab tonight. I can arrange it within the hour. If the boy is wrong, no harm done. If the boy is right," he paused, "then we will know." Camille's face went very still. And in that stillness, Nathaniel saw the truth. He just wasn't quite ready to say it out loud, not yet. He turned to Elijah one more time. "You're very brave, son. Stay close to your father. Don't go anywhere." Elijah nodded, his small chin lifting slightly with something that might have been pride, but mostly looked like relief. Then Nathaniel turned to face the woman in white. "Camille," Nathaniel said, his voice no longer gentle. "Open the clutch." The ballroom had become a held breath. 300 guests, dozens of staff, 2 photographers who had quietly set their cameras to record, and one small boy standing perfectly still beside his father, all waiting. Camille's hand remained on the clutch. Her knuckles were white. "Nathaniel," she said softly, leaning toward him so that only the head table could hear, "do you understand what you are doing right now? You are humiliating me in front of every person who matters in this city. Our families, your business associates, the press. Tomorrow this will be on every gossip page from here to the coast. You will not be able to undo this, so I will ask you one more time. Please, send the boy and his father away, eat your dinner, and let us be married. We can deal with whatever questions you have in private afterward. I am begging you." It was a good speech. Nathaniel had to give her that. 6 months ago, perhaps even 6 weeks ago, it might have worked. The combination of wounded dignity, social pressure, and the implicit threat of public embarrassment was the exact cocktail that had served Camille Devereux beautifully in the 4 years he had known her. But Nathaniel was no longer thinking about the press, or the gossip pages, or the 300 guests. He was thinking about a small brown bottle in a white pearl clutch. He was thinking about the way she had insisted, 2 months ago, on hearing a new estate attorney. "Your old one is so slow, darling. Let me recommend someone." He was thinking about the trust documents she had asked him to sign in bed one Sunday morning, half awake, while she brought him coffee. Just a routine update, sweetheart. Carter Reynolds said you need to initial here. He was thinking about the night 3 weeks ago when he had felt strangely ill after dinner, and she had insisted on staying close, monitoring him, fussing in a way that had touched him at the time. He was thinking about how much weight he had lost in the last 2 months. Open the clutch, Camille. No. Then I will. He reached across the table. Camille snatched the clutch up and clutched it against her chest. Don't you dare, this is assault, this is mother. Vivienne Devereaux rose to her feet with imperial outrage. Nathaniel Hawthorne, you will not lay a hand on my daughter. Eleanor, control your son. This is beneath us, all of us. Eleanor Hawthorne did not move from her chair. Vivienne, she said calmly, sit down. I will not. Sit down. The two matriarchs stared at each other across the floral centerpiece. After a long moment, Vivienne sat. Dr. Harrison Webb stepped forward from his table, moving with the unhurried calm of a man who had broken bad news to families for 40 years. Camille, he said gently, if there is nothing in the clutch that concerns us, this can all be resolved in 10 seconds. Just open it. I want my attorney, Camille said. The words came out sharper than she had intended. They cracked across the ballroom like a small, telling sound. Several guests exchanged glances. An attorney at her own wedding. Before any accusation had been formally made, Nathaniel sat back slowly in his chair. Something inside him, something that had been holding on by a thread for the last several minutes, finally let go. You want your attorney, he repeated quietly. This has become a legal situation, Camille said. I am within my rights. Camille, I have not accused you of anything. I have only asked you to open a clutch. She did not respond. A side door opened. 2 men in dark suits entered. Hawthorne Estate security, called by someone, perhaps Eleanor, perhaps Harrison, perhaps a staff member who had been quietly watching the entire exchange. They positioned themselves discreetly along the wall, not threatening, simply present. Nathaniel turned to the security chief, a man named Walter Briggs who had served the family for 20 years. Walter, I need you to do something for me. Yes, sir. Please escort Miss Devereaux to the East Library. She is not to leave that room. She is not to make any phone calls. She is not to touch her clutch or her phone. Dr. Webb will accompany you to ensure her comfort. I will join you shortly. You can't do this, Camille said, but her voice had thinned. I can actually, Nathaniel replied. It's my estate. Walter stepped forward respectfully. Miss Devereaux, if you'll come with me, please. She did not move. Vivienne Devereaux stood again, her face mottled with fury. Camille, do not go anywhere with these men. Nathaniel, I am calling our family lawyer right now. Please do, Nathaniel said. He'll need to be involved eventually. There was something in the way he said eventually that made Vivienne slowly close her mouth. Camille rose. She walked head high between the 2 security men toward the East Library. She did not look back at Nathaniel. She did not look back at anyone. But as she passed the small boy standing beside his father, she did one thing that no one else in the room except Nathaniel and Eleanor Hawthorne caught. She looked at Elijah, and she smiled. It was not a kind smile. Marcus Carter felt it before he saw it. The way his son's shoulder stiffened beneath his hand, the small, sharp intake of breath. The way Elijah took half a step back, closer to his father, his eyes following Camille all the way to the library door. That smile had said something. Marcus did not know exactly what, but he knew the language of it. He had seen it in the eyes of men who had shortchanged him on construction sites years ago. He had seen it on the face of the lone officer who had denied him 3 times before approving the small apartment lease he and Elijah now shared. It was the smile of someone who had not yet finished what they intended to do. Marcus pulled his son a little closer. The East Library door closed behind Camille, Walter Briggs, and Dr. Webb. The ballroom exhaled all at once, a collective release of breath that turned almost immediately into a low, urgent buzz of conversation. Phones came out. Guests whispered. The 2 photographers were already typing rapidly on their devices. Nathaniel stood and raised one hand. The room quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice clear and steady, I owe each of you an apology and an explanation. Neither is going to come tonight in the way any of us expected. The wedding will not be proceeding this evening. Please remain seated. Dinner will continue to be served by my staff, and I would ask that no one leave the estate for the next hour. My security team will be speaking with several of you briefly, and I appreciate your patience. A murmur rose. Nathaniel raised his hand again. This is not a request being made of any guest specifically. It is a precaution. You are all my friends, my family, and my colleagues. I am asking for your trust for 1 hour. After that, you will have my full hospitality, my deepest apologies for tonight's events, and the truth, whatever it turns out to be." He paused. "Mr. Donovan, please secure my plate and my wine glass. Wrap them carefully. They are not to be touched by anyone except Dr. Webb when he arrives at the kitchen. Marcus." Marcus straightened. "Yes, sir." "You and your son will come with me, please." Marcus glanced down at Elijah. The boy nodded, and the three of them moved quietly toward a side door that led to the smaller family parlor adjacent to the ballroom. Eleanor Hawthorne rose from her chair and followed them, leaning lightly on a polished walnut cane she rarely used in public. The parlor was warm, paneled in dark wood, with two leather chairs facing a small fireplace. A single lamp glowed on the side table. Nathaniel closed the door behind them, and for a moment the four of them simply stood in the quiet. Then Nathaniel turned to Marcus and extended his hand. "Mr. Carter, I don't think I caught your full name out there." "Marcus, sir, Marcus Carter." They shook hands. Nathaniel's grip was firm. Marcus had expected stiff politeness. He had not expected this. "Marcus, your son just saved my life. I don't say that lightly. I'm not certain of it yet, but I'm certain enough. Whatever happens in the next hour, I want you to know two things. First, your son is not in any trouble. Not from me, not from anyone in this house. Second, your job here tonight is not your job anymore. We'll discuss what comes next when this is over, but you don't have to be afraid of losing it. You understand me?" Marcus's throat tightened. He nodded once because he did not trust himself to speak. Eleanor lowered herself slowly into one of the leather chairs and looked at Elijah. "Come here, child. Sit with me a moment." Elijah glanced at his father. Marcus nodded. The boy crossed the rug carefully and stood beside the old woman's chair. Eleanor studied him with eyes that had watched the world change for 7.5 decades. "You know what bravery is, Elijah?" "I think so, ma'am." "What is it?" "It's when you're scared but you do the right thing anyway." Eleanor's mouth curved very slightly. "Who taught you that?" "My dad and my mom before she died." The old woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her thin, papery hand over the boy's small one. "Your mother would be very proud of you tonight, Elijah Carter. Very proud indeed." Elijah's eyes filled just for a second before he blinked them clear. Nathaniel turned to his mother. "I need to speak with Camille. Will you sit with them?" "Of course." "Walter," Nathaniel said into a small radio at his belt, "is Dr. Webb still in the library?" "Yes, sir." "Miss Devereaux is requesting her clutch back. We have not returned it." "Good. Bring the clutch to the library. Do not open it. I'll be there in 2 minutes." "Yes, sir." Nathaniel paused at the door. He looked back at the boy sitting next to his mother and at the quiet, dignified father standing behind them, and something passed across his face that none of them had seen yet. It was the face of a man who had finally understood something he should have understood months ago. Then he opened the door and walked toward the East Library. The East Library smelled of old leather and lemon polish. Floor-to-ceiling shelves held first editions Nathaniel's grandfather had collected, their spines gleaming softly under recessed lighting. A long mahogany table ran down the center of the room. At the far end, Camille Devereaux sat in a high-backed chair, her white silk gown pooling around her ankles, her hands folded with deliberate composure in her lap. Dr. Harrison Webb stood near the window. Walter Briggs stood by the door. The white pearl clutch sat in the middle of the long table, untouched, exactly halfway between Camille and the empty chair where Nathaniel would sit. Nathaniel entered, closed the door behind him, and walked slowly to the chair at the head of the table. He did not sit immediately. He stood for a moment, looking at the woman he was supposed to have married 30 minutes ago. She was still beautiful. That was the strange part. Her makeup had not smudged. Her hair had not loosened. The diamond tiara still caught the light. Whatever was happening inside her, none of it showed on the surface. "Camille," he said quietly, taking his seat. "I am going to ask you some questions. You do not have to answer them, but I want you to understand something first. Whatever is in that clutch, we are going to find out tonight. Either you will open it, or the lab will tell us what is in the bottle, or both. There is no version of the next hour where this remains unknown. Do you understand me?" She did not respond. "I am not the police. I am not the press. I am the man who, until 45 minutes ago, was about to spend the rest of his life with you. I am giving you one chance to tell me in this room with only the three of us present what is happening. After that, this becomes a different kind of conversation, with different people, in different rooms. Do you understand?" Camille looked at him for a long moment, then she tilted her head slightly. "You're choosing a child over me," she said. "A black serving boy over me." It was a calculated sentence. She wanted to see what it would do to him, whether the old conditioning of her world, her mother's world, the world of certain whispered assumptions in certain old rooms would surface in his face. It did not. Instead, Nathaniel said something very soft and very final. "I am choosing the truth, Camille." The truth happened to walk into the room in the shape of a 9-year-old boy. That tells me everything I need to know about which of you I should have been listening to all along. Something in her face shifted. The composure cracked just slightly at the corner of her mouth. "Open the clutch, Camille." "No, Walter." The security chief stepped forward, drew on a pair of thin cotton gloves he had pulled from his jacket, and lifted the clutch carefully. He undid the clasp. He turned the clutch upside down over a small silver tray that Dr. Webb had placed on the table. A lipstick, a small mirror, a folded handkerchief, a set of keys, and a small brown glass bottle no larger than a thumb with a black dropper cap. It rolled once across the silver tray and came to rest against the edge. Dr. Webb leaned forward without touching it. He studied the bottle for a long moment. Then he straightened up and looked at Nathaniel. "I can't identify it by sight," he said. "But I can tell you what it is not. It is not perfume, it is not eye drops, it is not any prescription bottle I have ever seen, and there is no label." Camille had gone very still. Nathaniel did not look at the bottle, he looked at her face. "3 weeks ago," he said quietly, "I came home from the Singapore trip feeling unwell. You made me dinner. I was sick that night. I was sick the next day. I lost 4 pounds in a week. Do you remember that?" She said nothing. "2 weeks before that, I had the flu, or what we thought was the flu. I had no fever, just nausea, just fatigue, just confusion. Harrison, do you remember what you said to me when I came to your office?" Dr. Webb's face had gone gray. "I said I couldn't find anything wrong on the blood work. I said you were probably just overworked. I told you to take a vacation." "You did. I didn't take the vacation." Nathaniel finally looked at the bottle. "Camille, how long?" She did not answer. "How long, Camille?" Her chin lifted just slightly. The first crack of something real, something cold and almost amused, passed across her eyes. "You signed the new trust document 6 weeks ago," she said. That was all she said, but it was enough. Nathaniel sat back in his chair very slowly. Dr. Webb sank into the chair beside him as though his legs had given out. Walter Briggs's gloved hand closed around the small brown bottle with the careful precision of a man who had just realized he was holding evidence in a criminal case. "Walter," Nathaniel said, his voice barely above a whisper, "call Detective Reyes. Tell her I need her at the estate tonight. Tell her it's a matter of attempted homicide, and tell her to bring a forensic team." "Yes, sir." Walter walked out. Nathaniel looked at the woman across the table. "You almost killed me," he said. "And you would have stood at that altar in an hour and said I do." Camille looked at the ceiling. "I almost did," she said. "Yes." Dr. Harrison Webb pressed both palms flat against the mahogany table as though he needed it to hold him upright. For 40 years he had treated the Hawthorne family. He had delivered Nathaniel's younger sister. He had been at the bedside when Nathaniel's father had died of the heart attack that had passed the empire to a stunned 29-year-old. He had watched Nathaniel build a life that had survived loss, scandal, and the relentless pressure of inherited wealth. He had not in all of that ever sat in a room with a woman who had just calmly confirmed she had been poisoning the man she was about to marry. "Why?" he asked. The single word came out hoarser than he intended. Camille tilted her head toward him with something almost like polite interest, as though he had asked her to pass the salt. "You don't actually want the answer, Harrison. You want a story, a clean one, with a clean villain and a clean motive, so that when you tell it to your wife tonight it makes sense." She smiled faintly. "I'm not going to give you that. You wouldn't understand it. Try me." She looked at Nathaniel instead. "Do you know what it's like," she said, "to be groomed your entire life to be an extension of a man, not a wife, not a partner, an extension? From the time I was 15, my mother brought men through our house and presented me like a piece of fine art. This is Camille. She speaks 4 languages. She plays the cello. She has perfect manners. I was a product, Nathaniel. I was inventory." "That's not an answer to the question." "I'm getting to it." Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. "By the time I met you, I had been engaged twice and broken both off. Do you know why? Because the moment I would have signed those papers, I would have ceased to exist. I would have become Mrs. Whoever, Mrs. Old Money, Mrs. Foundation Chair. I would have spent the next 40 years smiling in photographs and managing a household and watching some man's empire grow without ever building anything of my own. And then I would have died, and there would have been a beautiful obituary about what a wonderful wife I had been and nothing else." She paused. "I decided I was not going to die that way." Nathaniel listened. He did not interrupt. He simply listened, the way he had listened to Elijah, with the focused stillness of a man who had finally decided that the truth, however ugly, was worth more than his comfort. "So you decided to inherit instead," he said quietly. "I decided to exist, Nathaniel. The trust documents you signed 6 weeks ago made me the controlling beneficiary in the event of your incapacitation or death, not a widow's portion. Controlling. I would have run the Hawthorne foundations. I would have voted the shares. I would have had a seat at every table you currently occupy. I would have been someone. You would have been a murderer. Only technically, the bottle is not lethal in single doses, cumulative exposure over 6 to 9 months. By the time you became seriously ill, I would have been your devoted wife of nearly a year, nursing you through a mysterious decline. The doctors would have searched for cancer. They would not have found it. They would have called it idiopathic. You would have died in our bed, holding my hand, and I would have wept beautifully at the funeral, and then I would have built something. I would have built a life. On my corpse. On the wreckage of a system that was never going to let me build it any other way. The silence that followed was not the silence of shock. The shock had already passed through them and left. This was the silence of two people who had loved each other or had thought they had, finally seeing one another with no light filtered through anything. "You could have left me," Nathaniel said. "You could have walked away. You would have walked away wealthy. The prenup alone would have given you 18 million. 18 million is allowance. 18 million is go-away money. 18 million is what a man gives a woman when he wants her to disappear quietly. I did not want to disappear quietly, Nathaniel. I wanted to be inside the room. And the boy," for the first time, Camille's composure flickered. "What about the boy? You smiled at him as you walked past. What was that smile for?" She did not answer. "Camille, what was the smile for?" "I was just acknowledging him," she said. "He's a clever child. He deserved that much." "That is a lie." She shrugged one elegant shoulder. "Believe what you like." Nathaniel stood up, slowly. He walked the length of the table. He stopped beside her chair. "If anything happens to that boy or his father in the next month, the next year, the next decade, I will know. And I will spend every dollar I have making certain it traces back to you and to whoever you sent. Do you understand me?" She looked up at him. "I understand you, Nathaniel." "Good." He turned and walked out of the library. He did not look back. Behind him, Camille Devereux sat very still in her white silk dress, the diamond tiara still perfect in her hair, her hands still folded calmly in her lap. She was no longer smiling. Detective Imani Reyes arrived at the Hawthorne estate 42 minutes later, accompanied by 2 uniformed officers and a forensic technician carrying a hard-sided case. She had worked the city's white-collar crimes unit for 11 years, and before that homicide for 6. She had been called out of bed for this one. She did not look particularly tired. Nathaniel met her at the front entrance of the estate. The driveway, which 2 hours earlier had been lined with valet-parked luxury cars under string lights, was now a strange tableau. Half the guests had left despite Nathaniel's request, slipping away with the practiced discretion of people who had spent their lives avoiding scandals not their own. The other half remained inside, finishing dinner in subdued clusters, waiting for whatever came next. "Mr. Hawthorne," Reyes said, extending her hand. "Walter briefed me on the drive over. I'd like to see the evidence first, then I'll need to speak with the suspect, then I'll need statements from the boy, his father, the chef, and yourself, in that order. Whatever you need, detective. I'll also need to know if you intend to press charges." Nathaniel did not hesitate. "I do." "Good." She nodded once, a clean professional gesture. "That makes my job simpler." She moved through the house with quiet efficiency. The plate and the wine glass were collected from the kitchen and sealed. The small brown bottle was photographed in place on the silver tray in the library and then bagged. Camille was read her rights in the same library where she had been sitting for the last hour, and she did not say a single word in response, which Reyes noted with the small satisfaction of a detective who had learned long ago that silence at this stage almost always meant a guilty conscience and a good attorney on retainer. Vivienne Devereux, when she learned that her daughter was being arrested, became, briefly, hysterical. Then she became very calm. Then she made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, and within 90 minutes the most expensive criminal defense attorney in the state was driving north toward the estate at considerable speed. None of that mattered very much in the parlor where Nathaniel sat with Marcus Carter and Elijah. Eleanor had brought them tea. Real tea, in real cups, on a silver tray she had carried in herself despite the 3 staff members who had tried to take it from her. She had also brought a plate of small sandwiches because she was a woman of a certain generation who believed that no crisis was so severe that it justified an empty stomach. Elijah was eating his second cucumber sandwich with the focused dedication of a 9-year-old who had not realized, until the food was placed in front of him, how hungry he was. Marcus had not touched his tea. "Marcus," Nathaniel said gently, "drink something. You've had a long night." "Yes, sir." Marcus picked up the cup. His hand was steadier than it had been an hour ago. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't really know what to say. I keep thinking I should be saying something." "You don't have to say anything. I keep thinking I should be thanking you." "For what?" "For believing him." Nathaniel set down his own cup. "Marcus, I want to be very clear with you about something. I did not do your son a favor tonight. Your son did me the favor. The largest favor anyone has done me in my entire life. Do you understand the difference?" Marcus's eyes filled. He looked down at his hands. "Yes, sir, I understand. My name is Nathaniel. Please don't call me sir anymore, not when it's just us in a room." Marcus nodded slowly. He could not quite manage Nathaniel yet, but he stopped saying sir. Elijah finished his sandwich and looked up. "Is the lady going to jail?" "Yes," Nathaniel said. "She is. Forever." "Probably not forever, but for a long time, and she will never be near you or your father or this house ever again. I have promised that, Elijah. I keep my promises." Elijah considered this with the same gravity he had brought to everything else that night. Then he said, "Okay." He reached for another sandwich. Eleanor's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a real smile she had managed all evening. "Marcus," Nathaniel said, "I need to talk to you about a few practical things. They can wait until tomorrow if you'd prefer, but I'd like to say them tonight while it's clear in my head." "Now is fine as Nathaniel." Nathaniel almost smiled. "First, the catering company. Your son disrupted what was supposed to be the most expensive event of their year. They will not be paying you for tonight's work, and they will likely try to terminate you to protect their relationship with my mother and me. That will not be happening. I will be making a call to their owner in the morning to make sure of it. But I would also like to offer you something else." Marcus waited. "I need someone to manage the household staff at the estate. The current house manager has been talking about retiring for 2 years and has been waiting for me to find a replacement. The position pays $120,000 a year. It includes a 2-bedroom cottage on the grounds with full utilities. There is excellent private school tuition included for any dependents. It is a serious job, Marcus. It would require you to learn a great deal quickly, but I think you could do it, and I would very much like you to consider it." Marcus had stopped breathing. Elijah looked up from his sandwich mid-chew, his eyes very wide. "Sir," Marcus said, "Nathaniel, I'm a caterer. I worked construction before that. I don't have any experience. You raised a son who walked into a room of 300 wealthy strangers and told the truth at the top of his lungs because it was the right thing to do. I don't think experience is what I'm short on, Marcus. I think character is what I'm short on, and I'd like more of it in this house." Marcus could not speak. Elijah swallowed his sandwich. "Dad," he said quietly, "say yes." Marcus Carter did not say yes that night, not because he didn't want to. He wanted to so badly that it frightened him. He had learned, in 38 years of being a black man in America, that things which seemed too good in a single moment usually revealed their complications by morning. He told Nathaniel he needed to think. Nathaniel said he understood, and that the offer would still be on the table at breakfast, and at lunch, and at dinner, and for as long as Marcus needed it to be. That night, the Hawthorne estate gave Marcus and Elijah one of the guest rooms in the East Wing. It was larger than the entire apartment they shared in the city. Elijah stood in the doorway and stared at the 4-poster bed for a long time before he turned to his father and whispered, "Dad, am I allowed to sit on it?" "Yes, son, you can sit on it." Elijah climbed onto the bed very carefully, the way a person might climb onto a museum exhibit. He sat in the exact center, his small legs sticking straight out, and looked up at his father with an expression Marcus had not seen since before his wife had died. "Dad, yeah, Mom would have liked this room." Marcus sat down on the edge of the bed. He did not trust himself to answer right away. After a moment he said, "Yes, son, she would have." "Dad, yeah. Did I do the right thing tonight, really?" Marcus turned to look at his boy. Elijah's eyes were tired, the kind of tired that came after a long day of being braver than a person should ever have to be at 9 years old. "Son," Marcus said quietly, "your mother and I, when you were born, we made each other a promise. We said we were going to raise a boy who would tell the truth even when the truth was hard, even when the truth made people angry, even when the truth might cost him something. We said we would teach you that there's no such thing as a small lie that doesn't grow into a big one, and no such thing as a small truth that doesn't matter." Elijah listened, the way he had listened to his father his whole life. "Tonight you told the hardest truth you've ever told, in front of 300 strangers, in a room where everyone was telling you to be quiet, and you didn't stop. Son, you didn't just do the right thing. You did the thing most grown men in that room couldn't have done. And your mother is watching you tonight, Elijah Carter. I promise you that. She is watching you, and she is so proud she's lit up like the whole sky." Elijah's lower lip trembled. He climbed across the bed and pressed himself into his father's chest, and Marcus held him while he cried the small, quiet tears of a child who had been carrying something all night that he had not been able to set down until this moment. They fell asleep that way, both of them, still in their clothes, the bedside lamp still on. By morning, the world had changed. The story broke before sunrise. The two photographers from the society pages had not waited. The headlines were everywhere by 6 a.m. Billionaire's bride arrested at altar after 9-year-old catering boy exposes poison plot. Hawthorne wedding becomes crime scene as heir avoids near-fatal dose. The boy who saved a billionaire. Within 24 hours, Elijah Carter's name was on every major morning show in the country. Marcus refused all interview requests on his son's behalf. "He is a child," Marcus said, in the one statement he allowed Nathaniel's public relations team to release. "He did what any decent person should do. He does not need to be a celebrity. He needs to be allowed to be 9. The statement, perhaps because of its simplicity, became one of the most shared quotes of the week. Camille Devereux was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and 3 counts of fraudulent inducement related to the trust documents. Her attorney attempted to argue that the small brown bottle contained only an herbal supplement she had been adding to her fiancé's food to support his stamina. The forensic lab destroyed that argument within 48 hours. The substance was a slow-acting compound that caused cumulative organ damage and was difficult to detect in standard blood work. It was the kind of thing one did not obtain by accident. Investigators traced the bottle's origin to a chemist in another state who, when offered immunity, gave Camille up without hesitation. She pled out eventually. 22 years. No possibility of parole for 15. Vivienne Devereux's social calendar collapsed within the month. She moved abroad. Nathaniel did not attend the sentencing. He sent a letter which was read into the record. It was 3 sentences long. "I forgive you because forgiveness is for me, not for you. I will not forget because forgetting is how this happens to someone else. I hope in the years you have ahead, you find the courage that a 9-year-old boy showed in 1 minute on a Saturday night." Marcus said yes to the job. He said yes the morning after over breakfast in the small parlor where Eleanor Hawthorne had brought him tea the night before. Eleanor cried when he said it. She was embarrassed about the crying. Marcus pretended not to notice because he was a man who understood dignity. Elijah started at the private school in September. He was, predictably, very good at it. A year passed. The Hawthorne estate, which had once felt to Nathaniel like a beautiful mausoleum he was slowly haunting alone, became something else entirely. Marcus turned out to be exactly the kind of house manager Nathaniel had hoped he would be: quiet, observant, fair to every member of the staff, and possessed of the kind of moral clarity that made small problems get solved before they became large ones. The staff, who had spent years walking carefully around the previous manager's moods, settled into their work with a new kind of ease. The estate ran better than it had in a decade. Elijah, true to his father's prediction, thrived. He made friends slowly and carefully, the way he did everything. He joined the school chess club and lost his first 6 matches and won his 7th. He developed an interest in marine biology, which he announced one evening at dinner with the solemnity of a man declaring his life's vocation. Nathaniel ordered him 3 books on whales the next morning. Eleanor Hawthorne, who had not taken to anyone new in approximately 15 years, took to Elijah immediately. She taught him chess on Sunday afternoons in the library. She corrected his table manners with patient ruthlessness. She let him sit beside her at the Hawthorne Foundation board meetings, where he was expected to be quiet, but where she would occasionally lean over and whisper to him about what each board member's facial expression actually meant. "Watch Mr. Henderson, Elijah. When he scratches his ear, he is about to lie." Elijah took notes. Nathaniel changed too. Not in dramatic ways, but in the small, deep ways that real change always happens. He took fewer meetings. He came home for dinner more often. He began calling his sister, who lived in Boston, every Sunday afternoon. He had not done that in years. He started a scholarship fund at Elijah's school, anonymous in name but well-known in practice, for children whose parents worked in the service industry. The fund was administered by Marcus. The wedding incident in the months after it happened became a kind of cultural shorthand. Pulling an Elijah, people began to say, when they meant telling a hard truth in a room that did not want to hear it. The phrase showed up in news articles, in graduation speeches, in church sermons. Elijah found this slightly embarrassing and mostly funny. He once asked his father whether it would still be called that when he was old. Marcus told him probably not, because most things people say don't last that long, but that the act itself, the choice to speak when speaking was hard, would always have his name on it inside their family, and that was the part that mattered. One night, almost exactly a year after the wedding that did not happen, Nathaniel found Elijah sitting on the back terrace of the estate, watching the stars over the water. It was late. The boy was supposed to be in bed. Nathaniel sat down beside him. Trouble sleeping. A little. Want to talk about it? Elijah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't said anything?" Nathaniel considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Every day, Elijah, for a while I wondered every day. Do you still?" "Less now. I used to wonder because I was scared. Now I mostly wonder because I want to remember. There's a difference." Elijah nodded slowly, the way he did when he was filing something away to think about later. "Mr. Nathaniel." "Yes, son. I'm glad I said something." "I'm glad you did too, Elijah, more than I know how to say." They sat for a long time after that, not talking, just watching the stars. After a while, Marcus came out to find them, and the three of them stayed on the terrace until the moon moved across the sky and Elijah finally fell asleep against his father's shoulder. Marcus carried him inside. Nathaniel watched them go, a father and his son walking through a house that had become, against every expectation any of them had carried a year ago, a home. He stayed on the terrace alone for a while longer, thinking about the night that had changed everything. About a small voice cutting through music. About a child who had refused to be silent in a room full of adults telling him to be. About how close he had come to losing everything, not in the dramatic way he had always imagined, but in the quiet way that real loss usually happens, one signed document at a time, one small dose at a time, one assumed trust at a time. He thought about the smile Camille had given Elijah as she walked past him to the library. The smile that had meant, "I see you, and I am not finished with you." She had been wrong about that. She had been finished from the moment Elijah Carter had opened his mouth. Sometimes the most powerful person in a room is not the one with the money, or the title, or the name above the door. Sometimes it is the smallest person in the room, the one nobody is looking at, the one who has been told all evening to stay quiet and stay back. Sometimes that person looks at what is happening and decides in one ordinary second that the truth is worth more than their fear. When that happens, empires shift, lives are saved, families are made. And a boy who was told he didn't belong in the room turns out to be the only reason anyone in that room got to go home. If this story moved you, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. Subscribe for more stories that remind us why the smallest voices often carry the biggest truths.